Well, good morning or afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I've decided to resurrect my spatial talks. I've done these for quite a few years, haven't done any for some time. But I wanted to kind of make this a series, actually, sort of connected pieces, not just isolated talks. So there is a continuum here between this talk and the ones I'm going to do in the future. I wanted to actually drive to today in these talks because we are at a really important inflection point in the geospatial industry. And I wanted to talk at length about that, but I wanted to give some context in these first two or three talks around today. And I thought I'd start mildly self indulgent, but for you, it gives you some context about who I am and where I've come from and my journey actually within the world of GIS and geospatial. So I was born in the UK, in England. I was born north of London in a town called Hemel Hempstead, which was a beautiful town, big town. It was a new town. I was born on the edge of the town, so I spent my youth running around in the fields with a bunch of other kids, all similar ages. So I had a really fun upbringing with my brother, Russ. I was how would I describe myself? I was probably an academic kid, a little bit anxious, a little bit unsure of myself, but at school I was good. I was very sporty as well, big soccer player, and sort of sport came easily to me. So I did, in England, we did a series of preliminary exams called O levels, high school equivalent in the US. Did very well at those, was particularly good at not very quantitative. So maths, physics, chemistry were not my thing. History, English, geography, which we'll talk about, were my thing. And somehow I'm wired that way. Don't quite know. Writing's easy. Thinking through sort of big picture things always become easy for me. So, we're all wired in different ways. So I did super well at O levels, was, sort of top sporting guy, played for the main team, soccer team, and, all sports were easy for me. So it was fun. Then I got to the next phase of high school in England, secondary school as we call it, where everything crashed. You then a lot of people leave in England and go to work at 16, 15, 16. I stayed on and did A levels. So you cut down the number of classes you do. I did 3. And this is where things started to go a little south for me. I decided it was a good idea to do physics, to do maths, and I was debating whether to do chemistry or not until my geography teacher came to me and said, "What the flippin' heck are you doing?" So I added geography in. So I did maths, physics, geography. And in 2 years, struggling 2 years, I failed all of them. So I got to 17 and thought, where am I going to go now? And as it happened, my brother that is doing his O levels, he failed all his O levels. So it was a bit of a harrowing time in our house in terms of sort of the academics. But I had a very supportive dad. So I decided to retake my A levels. So I did. I dropped maths. I kept doing physics, and I kept doing geography. And geography's always been my passion. Not quite sure I didn't realise that at 16, but when I nearly didn't do geography as an A level. So I took those again. I got an A in geography at A level, which was a pretty. I was told by one of the teachers I was the first person to ever get an A at A level in our school. I don't know if that was right or not, but it was a tough thing to do to get an A at A level. So I was pleased with that. Failed my physics. Thought, what am I going to do now? Because I really wanted to go to university. So I redid physics 2 more times, if you can believe it. And I worked part-time in a ski shop in London. So I finally graduated, or at least I finally qualified to go to Queen Mary College in London. So I went to London University and did a physical geography degree, which was joy of my life in many ways. I spent 3 years there, and it was the most wonderful experience. I can't describe how much joy I got out of that. So I finished studying. I'd finished bashing my heads against books. I was 20. And I thought it was time to go do something else. And I'd always been intrigued by the US. I've always been intrigued by the rest of the world as a geographer, but I ended up coming to the US. And I ended up in Utah, which is, if anyone watching this knows Utah, America's different to Europe. Utah is a Mormon state in the mountains of the US, and I didn't know much about Utah. I just knew there was a good skiing, and Robert Redford had a ski resort here. And the Osmonds were from here as well. I kind of knew 3 things. So I came to Utah. I ended up in Park City, And I spent 6 months here skiing and working, and it was fun. I enjoyed it, and I met my wife actually at that time. She was still at high school, working in the ski shop. So this is in the mid '80s. um, and to cut a long story short, I came back to England, went to work, which started working in a market research company, which I hated. And then my wife and I decided to get married, and I moved back to America. So I've lived in Utah for over 30 years now. Still got a strong accent. I'm not very good at mimicking American accents. But when I got here, as a lover of geography, but I didn't know what to do with myself. I was, a sort of a loss. I didn't really want to do the market research stuff. Um, I was going to go to medical school of all things, so I was chopping and changing and trying to understand what I wanted to do, and ended up going to the University of Utah Geography Department, and I saw this thing called GIS, and this is kind of where the story really begins. But it was a map making technology, but it was in the geography department. I was like, what is this? This is interesting to me, but I've never been a map person, honestly. And again, this will be part of the story as this evolves. But the biggest thing I saw when I got here, and I got here in 1991, in 1992, I saw the internet and I thought, oh my gosh, the world's about to change. And that was really, I'm going to talk to you in these talks about the three phases that I see in technology, particularly in the geospatial industry, these three impactful things that I've been sort of at the center of. So I saw the internet, I saw this desktop, actually saw 𝐉𝐸, if anyone can remember that, the Esri product. And I thought, gosh, if you brought these two things together, wouldn't that be something? So that started my journey in the world of GIS. I did a master's degree in, essentially I wrote a GIS web application in 1996. So I was super early in getting involved in that world. But I could see where the future was heading. I could see that the internet was going to be a massive thing. And I saw this industry, which was a relatively small industry, very desktop based, very mapping oriented, but it was a geographical thing. So I thought, this is interesting. So that was my journey. I had to battle my way through that, honestly, which is again the sort of a little bit of the story of my life. See something ahead and go, that's a trend that I think is going to be a big deal. And but I had to battle my way through. My professors weren't very happy with me doing something which was sort of like that. There was no connection to the computer science department, which again I sort of battled away and said, why is GIS not connected to the computer science department? Because this is fundamentally, a computer thing. And geographers should know how to program and all the things that we know now. So I was, again, a bit of a battle, a bit of a rebel on the side. But it was interesting because when I started doing that work, and I actually used Map Objects IMS, anyone that remembers that, I think it was called Map Objects. Yeah, it was. I always want to call it Map Objects. Anyway, it was the earliest IMS product that Esri released. So I used that and I built it in Visual Basic. And actually, in the end, the Forest Service sponsored me. I created an application for them. So it was a win-win because they paid me to do the work. So it really helped pay for part of my education. So it was a great start to my journey with GIS. I didn't know anything about computers. I had to teach myself how to program. I had to battle people to say, I think this is something that's going to be a big deal. And it eventually got people's approval. It was really heartening for me to have the other graduate students looking over my shoulder at what I was doing and asking me. And a number of them actually followed in. I wasn't so directly because of me, but they followed in my path. A couple of them started to learn how to program. One of them actually switched over and started working in sort of the internet-based world. And I know actually his career now has been sort of focused there. So it was kind of interesting to be sort of groundbreaking like that. So there's the start of my journey. I'll do a second talk. The next talk will kind of continue that journey. But I really wanted to, in summation of this talk is, I saw the internet and linked those two together in the mid 90s, very early into that game. I also started a company at the end of the 2000s, which was a mobile development company, again, really early into that game. And again, had to fight some battles there as well. And now we're at a really interesting inflection point, as I mentioned. It's not, I started talking about Geospatial 2.0 probably 2 or 3 years ago, which got a lot of people's attention. That was really me realizing that we're moving away from 2D mapping and really starting to use geospatial, multi-dimensional geospatial data for much bigger uses than just generate via 2D map. And that was where the remote sensing world came in, and this whole world of LiDAR and all of the other sort of data sources we've now got, which means we can actually construct digital twins and all that. So I was talking about that 3 years ago, before most people were even sort of thinking in that way. And now we're seeing this change in the industry, which is underway. And I think the biggest piece of that, which is where we'll move to, is AI. So not only machine learning and building products with machine learning, but also on the business side, using generative AI, particularly to tell the geospatial story. So that's today's talk. I'll call it a Friday talk. I'll probably do more of these talks through the week, so it won't just be a Friday. But that sort of starts the ball rolling in my journey, and sort of sets the stage for the other pieces I want to talk about as we begin to look at the evolution of geospatial, and particularly focus on where we are today. So thanks for watching this. Again, if you like it, feel free to follow me on LinkedIn, and subscribe to the spatial channel, that Spatial-Next channel that we've got on YouTube. I'll do more of these in the next few weeks. Again, thanks for watching.